Hi, and welcome to Dave's Classic Collectibles. Today we're going to look at collecting model cars and also the scales that they represent. It's a big thing, and I know a lot of people already know their scales, but a lot of people don't. And the amount of times I get asked, how big is this, is really something that's prompted me to do this video today. And also to probably look a little bit at collecting and maybe why you collect. The bottom line is really there's no right or wrong to collecting. There is advisable things and things you can do, but basically a collector is whatever you really want to do. Obviously 118 Bathurst collectors, Bathurst winners, are definitely probably the most desirable car, but it doesn't mean that's for everybody. And people collect all different things. If it's something simple like Alan Moffat cars, police cars, or Holden Commodores, Peter Brock cars that remind them from what the first car they owned, it doesn't really matter to Japanese. It's really endless. If it's Holden, Ford, Mitsubishi, or whatever you want to collect, or Formula One, it really is a minefield. It can go so far. Important tip is whatever you do decide to collect is that you do stay to one scale, or at least display that scale together. Having multiple displays, just even what's in front of me now, it sort of really doesn't look as good if you're just displaying it like what's behind me, which is predominantly all 118s. So now we'll start talking about a few scales. So here in Australia, the main scales that we really do have, or people that want to collect, are the 164, which is this one here, the 143, and then the 118. But there are other scales. 132 is another scale, which is this one here, which is predominantly for slot cars, but you can buy die-cast cars, but they are predominantly American. This one right here is the 124. Relatively new to Australia, very much an American scale. You see a lot of machinery and NASCARs in 124, but it's a newcomer on the block, and we'll go a little bit further deeper into that in regards to value for money and things like that, but it's been out a couple of years and does look sort of somewhat promising. Into a higher detail, the 164, which is right here, people predominantly call it matchbox size. So that's roughly around about 7-8 centimeters long, about 2.5, 3 centimeters wide, depending on the model, and probably about 2.5 centimeters high. That's the dimensions for a Commodore. So imagine if that was a mini to scale, it would obviously be a little bit smaller. The other thing we can bring out, and we will show you later too, is a 164 truck. And if you look at an Isuzu or an N300 truck, it's obviously going to be a lot bigger than that, because once again, it is to scale of 164. The second one here is the red VB Commodore, and as you can see, I've done all Commodores to try and make it easy today, so they basically are the same car on the road. The Trax car here in 143, so it's about 10 centimeters long. Commonly people might say they're the size of an iPhone, but well, how big is your iPhone? So you can debate that one. So yeah, about 10 centimeters long, about 4.5 centimeters wide, and probably about 4 centimeters high. So a fair bit bigger for your scale. A lot of them still are fixed, which is probably what I should have mentioned about the 164. Most 164 are still sealed, so they don't open. There are a few newcomers on the block. Things are starting to open and getting quite impressive, but as they do, the price also goes up. Same with the 143. There are a few models out there. Classic did some with open bonnets and stuff like that, which is quite nice, but obviously once again up goes the price. The main one most Aussies like collecting is the 118, which is this one here, which is definitely probably the most popular size that people want, that Aussies generally want to buy. And the good thing about them is that most of the models completely open. Being die-cast, there are a few resins that don't open, and a lot of collectors do sort of stay away from the stuff that doesn't open up. The Aussie people generally really want cars that open. So obviously this one has opening doors, bonnet, the whole lot. This car is roughly around about 25 centimeters long. It's about 10 centimeters wide and about 8.5 centimeters high. So it is the biggest, and commonly people generally call them in the industry shoebox size to try and explain the size of the car. So sometimes, as I said, a lot of people get confused on what they're actually getting and thinking that a 164 is a 118, but that's a 118, and obviously the price difference is quite dramatic. But all of them are very well scaled, which is probably a good thing, and they are scale models, and the new stuff now that's coming out, particularly in 164, is massive. And 164 is really kicking on in Japan, which is obviously pushing it, because a lot of cars are actually built, even though they might be Australian companies, but still built in Japan or in China. So yeah, so that's it. Who knows what the future could hold in smaller stuff. Obviously houses here, people are going into units and things like that, so things are getting smaller. Maybe the smaller scales will work, but definitely at the moment 118 is definitely the most popular model. What we will do is go outside actually into the workshop, and we'll have a look, and we'll bring these models up a bit closer and have a real good look at them and show you dimensions and things like that to hopefully get a bit of an understanding of how big these cars actually are. So these are the scales that you most likely going to see that collectors are going to have, or if you go into your store and have a good look around. So the first one is a Matchbox car. The idea of that is just because the 164 is next to it, and it's sort of people commonly say, oh, what size is a 164? Oh, it's about the size of a Matchbox. Well, you can see it's a little bit bigger, but that's the only reason why the Matchbox car is here today, just to sort of give you a bit of an idea. It's a Ford Bronco up against the HSV Walkinshaw. So the next sale is 143. So once again, in the Walkinshaw, we've done that to make it quite easy to get the reference, because therefore the car is pretty much exactly the same. The one after that is the 132. Not really that popular in Australia. Was probably tried around 10 or 15 years ago and didn't really kick off. But this is a slot car. It's a Scale Electrics car. It's actually a recent release and very, very popular as a slot car, and that's pretty much it. The next one next to it is a 124. Pretty close to a Walkinshaw. It's a VLSS Group A, so it's still a VL Holden Commodore. Very much the same size to give you a good reference. Been trialled a bit, but we'll talk about this a little bit later. And then the last one here is a 118, which, as I said earlier, definitely the most popular model in Australian collectors at the moment. There is one other one that has sort of come around recently, which is the 112 scale, which is obviously bigger than the 118, but I don't have one of those, and some people do sort of like them. They are getting around, they are a bit expensive, but also obviously the size does make it a bit harder for people to collect it. So these are our main three scales that are most popular in Australia, as we said. So this is your 164, quite popular and you know, very reasonably priced. So when they first come out, they estimate roughly from about $29.95 up to around $70 or $80, depending. Some of the stuff now that's coming out from Japan is unreal scale, and you know, we're getting opening bonnets and opening doors now. It's just going to a whole sort of new level. But the Bandy ones, that like this one here in front of me, the VL Walkinshaw, it doesn't open like a lot of 164s, and probably most 164s do not. But yeah, price now at the moment, they're probably around about $100, and they'll probably $29.25 or $29.95, somewhere around there when they first came out, quite a long time ago. The second car here is the 143. These were really, really big, probably 80s, you know, to 90s, because the 118, which is the next car we'll look at, the first 118 hit Australia roughly around about 1996 with the release of the Ford Falcon XW, XY, GTHOs, and also the Alan Moffat Bathurst winners, the 1970 and 71 car. They were pretty much where they started, and I think that was roughly around about 95, 96 is when 118 started, and Bandy started bringing them into Australia. So prior to that, it was really all 143. 143 was very, very big in tracks. And this one's actually a Dinkum, so this one's handmade. Yeah, so they're quite very good cars, very good in people's collections, because obviously at 143 it's not about size. You can store a lot of cars, boxes aren't too big, unlike the bigger models. Still quite popular today, but probably has backed off a little bit. I would probably say 164 is starting to take over a little bit where 143 was, so to speak. The last scale is really the 118, the big one, as we said before, like the shoebox model. It still is the popular, it still is the ants pants here in Australia. I think everyone loves it because they can handle it a bit more. Not that you shouldn't handle them, obviously, because they're a collector's item, but the point is that you can open them, and you can open doors, and you can open bonnets and all that sort of stuff. This one actually is the recent release by Classic Collectibles. Beautiful little model, but as I said in a previous episode, missing the carpet, and the boot doesn't open, but the colour is great, and it's a good looking car. These still are sort of around $350. They were the break actually in 118. Normally they were around the $299 mark. So this was the first model to more or less of the Australian manufacturers anyway, that's for sure, to hit the 350 mark. So people sort of question that. But even now, noticing just recently now, they're starting to actually go up in price. So if you did want to get one, I'd say try and hunt around now and get one at your 350, because the way things are going. Okay, so here's our 124s and a little bit of a closer look. They're sort of a little bit of a new kid. Well, DDA has just started bringing them out, and they're quite promising in regards to value for money. The scales, as in quality, is not too bad. I don't think it's as good as the 118s, but then, you know, it's a third of the price, so let's start talking realistic. The promising thing is they're actually going to apparently do the Bathurst cars. Now, as I said earlier, the most popular collection or most desirable collection is Bathurst, particularly in 118. So will the 124s kick off? I don't know. But they are very good value for money. The Tirana, as you can see right here, Their release date, so they're $109.95, as you can even see from that price tag there. And I just want to say thank you to Rowan from Sheriff Minicars who donated these cars, because I actually don't collect 124s. So just for the purpose of it, thanks very much, Rowan. And the other car we've got here is the HZ panel van. Now, the important thing about the HZ panel van is that it doesn't actually come with the Marlboro stickers, so they actually have been installed on the car. So that being done is $130 that he sells it for Rowan sells it for at Sheriff Minicars. So for an extra $20, you can't really not have the Marlboro decals on them. So the car looks the way that it's actually supposed to be. Picking on the car a little bit, it is missing the Tirana logo. It should actually have the Tirana logo sitting right there. You can actually do a scene with the 124 nearly, which a lot of people have done, like myself, with the 118, because Peter Brock actually won the championship in 1978. And there's a photo that goes around that a lot of people generally tend to see of at Sandown with a trailer and also the A9X sedan in the background. So who knows, if DDA do the come back later and do that car, that might be a nice thing. But $130 is pretty good value considering it opens up. As I said, not quite as good a scale as the 118. But to give you an idea, the 118 car now is anywhere around $1,300 to $1,500. So if you really want the HDD panel van for $130, it's not a bad one. So the VLSS in front, HDT in front, is actually the Alan Moffat and John Harvey car, the late John Harvey, unfortunately, that they drove and won that Le Mans race in. It was made by Dinkum and is quite an expensive car now. So 124. Trucks have released some in the past. They had a bit mixed results, didn't really take off. Dinkum's done some, hasn't really taken off. They are there, particularly for a lot of Dinkum collectors. Lovely size car, I can't lie. But at least now with the newcomer on the block with the DDA and things are starting opening doors and the boots and all that sort of stuff, maybe an interest that maybe people out there might want to start collecting. Because the most important thing, I think, with a collection is that you stay to one scale. Or I should say that you display one scale. A lot of collectors have different scales, but I think if you mix up the scales when you're displaying them, I don't think they look as good. All the 118s or all the 143s or all the 164s or the 124s, in this case, altogether do look better. And as I said, rumours are heading around that the DDA will continue doing some Bathurst cars. So that may be an option to be a cheap Bathurst set because you can't even buy a 143 Bathurst winner, or you would be struggling to get a 143 Bathurst winner for around $100. As I said before, most collectors will collect one scale, or at least display one scale together because it generally looks better. But really with collecting, there's no right or wrong. Purchase whatever you enjoy and collect whatever you want to enjoy, whatever the scale, whatever it is. Bathurst winners are definitely very collectible and desirable, but you could have all Holdens, all Fords, whatever you like. Race cars, particular drivers, it doesn't really matter. It's whatever's sentimental to you. It might have been the first car you owned or the first car you wanted to buy. Or what matters is that you enjoy it. We're all different and we collect for the fun of it, and that's the most important thing. That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe a bit of an insight on different scales and also a little bit on collecting. Big shout out to Rowan from Sheriff Minicars. Thank you very much for lending me a couple of 124s today to show you, because I actually don't collect 124s. So thank you to him. If you liked it, please send us a like down below. If you'd like to leave a comment, that's great. Maybe even mention what scale you're interested in collecting or that you do collect. That's it for today. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time on Dave's Classic Collectibles.